So welcome. As I said, today is the first my daughter Joy's birthday, and in many ways a very special day because of that, but also because there's something in the air. And so let us begin by taking a few moments to settle in. Feel our earth, Mother Earth beneath us, our feet by the sky above us. Feeling that vertical alignment with heaven and earth, and our hearts in the center. Focusing on the energy in the heart, feeling that energy expand as it receives from Mother Earth all her love, all her support, all her nutrients, nourishment. And then we feel the downpouring of light from above, from that place of source, from the very center of our galaxy, that downpouring of golden light, of healing, of transformation, allowing our hearts to open even more as we allow these beautiful vibrations of Mother Earth and Father Sky to fill our whole being, and allow the breath to encompass everything, and everything to encompass our breath as we expand our hearts and open to receive. So we have come to a point in this year where we are finished with the first quadrant, the first quarter of our year, a very tumultuous period with a very big emphasis on change, on navigating the unknown, fluctuations in all sorts of things, including weather, including people who come and go. Some people have left, some have said goodbye or have just fallen by the wayside. Perhaps new ones have shown up. But there is definitely a strong sense of much flux, of much change, and you might even feel that there is excitement about what is coming. Or, if you are not aligned with excitement, then perhaps there's a sense of fear of what is coming. Because what is ahead of us is the unknown, is that space in which there is this infinite potential. It is as if we have slipped into the void, and all the things that used to feel comfortable, that used to feel ordinary or normal, are no longer in the same way able to create the old kind of stability that we once had. Because nothing stays the same, and given the acceleration of time, the movement towards something new, something amazing, something that we have longed for so long, many of us. The dawning of an era of peace, and yet we understand too that there is a great amount of tumult, a great amount of upheaval in all aspects of our lives and the lives of many around us, and in Mother Earth herself, and in society, so that the only stability that is really available is the stability of our heart, of our connection with Mother Earth and Father Sky, and the going within to experience the true self that does not get affected by all the changes. That place of equanimity, of peace, of love. And this is very much a time for exercising love, unconditional love towards everyone, and especially toward ourselves. It is very easy to judge. It is very easy to look outside of us and point fingers or rally or create a sense of doom and gloom that everything is falling apart. And yet when you have that inner calm, that inner tranquility, that sense of knowing that everything is in divine order, that everything is working towards a higher good for the whole, and that everything is an opportunity for growth, for expansion, for the raising of our frequencies, and for a higher and higher attunement to the highest frequencies and levels that we are able to attain at this point. So we ask, we invoke, and we command that we are moving into a higher timeline. We are moving into the highest timeline that is possible for us, that we are currently capable of. A timeline that is moving closer and closer to the new earth, to what many call heaven on earth. This timeline is part of what we know from the future we have come here to bring. And so those of us, those of you who are light workers, if you are in that space of that inner sense of tranquility, of knowing who you are and why you are here, you will be continually radiating light, sending love into the places of darkness, sending light and healing to those who suffer, to those who live in fear or in darkness, to those who live in grief, to those who suffer from the ravages of greed and the oppression that many are under. And you send your light and you continue to ground into Mother Earth and align with Father Sky. And you know that every prayer, that every blessing that you send, every smile, every kind word is changing the balance from the darkness to the light, so that when the light has reached its critical mass, everything begins to move in a way that is harmonious for you, because you have done your work, because you do your practice, because you create positivity in your life, in your surroundings, create beauty. You create stillness, you create a sense of love and acceptance and compassion. And as you continue to do this, you become more and more at peace. Much of the turmoil is going on around you, but it doesn't affect you any longer. Those that you love, when they go through their challenges, you are able to be a stable force in their lives and send them love and healing and balance. And you trust and you know that patience and trust will get you everything that your heart desires, because everything is in transition, and because everything that is the illusion is falling away, and now you are coming face to face with your true self. You are having to look at the triggers in your life. You are having to look at the places where you are uncomfortable. where you sit in fear on a fence, not willing to take a step in either side, where you are wondering what will happen to your assets, to everything that you depend upon for your stability, and you come to a place where you realize that you are immortal, you are infinite, you are eternal and universal. You are not your body, you are not your mind, your thoughts, your emotions. You are beyond all these things. And as you recognize this, everything becomes like the passing clouds in the sky. The seasons change, the weather changes. You enjoy the sun, the warmth, the spring. You enjoy the times when you have to stay indoors because of the weather and catch up or rest or sleep. And you realize that you are going through a metamorphosis. As we have said, you are about to emerge from the cocoon. Some of you have already begun to emerge, and others of you are still waiting in the darkness, in that place of the quiet, of the sense of nothing moving, waiting for something to pop open so that you can take your rightful place on this earth as a sovereign being, as one who knows who they are, what their mission here is, and what they came for, and what they are moving towards. So understand that even in the midst of the chaos and the disintegration, and even in the midst of the stillness, there is motion, there is movement, evolution, and the opening and expansion to a higher and higher vibration, a higher level of light, of Christ consciousness, and of becoming, a place of becoming that which when you came here, you knew was going to be the goal. Becoming, you might say, a perfected being, one who does not any longer have flaws, have things that don't work, because everything is a flow of God's love, and each one, in their own way, is an expression of God's love, and there is a perfection in that. So hold the vision of a perfection that is not contrasted with an imperfection, that does not judge, but is perfect unto itself, just the way it is. It has been said that the only requirement to be loved is your existence itself. And so we want you to know that we love you dearly, that we are always with you in that innermost place of your heart, and that we will always be there to answer your questions when you reach out to us. Just don't expect the answers to be what you think they need to be or what you want. You will know. You will receive your answers in many different ways. Stay open. Keep your hearts open. Show up with a smile. Show up in honesty. Show up in humility. Show up with your heart open. We love you. You may now ask your questions, and we will record them separately. You're muted.
Yeah, so these questions won't be put out to the world.
This particular one, if you like, we could stop recording on this because nobody necessarily will want to. So if you prefer to have private questions, I'm recording yours separately on my voice recorder.
First, I'll ask questions that are relevant to everyone.
Okay. Then we'll leave that recording on.
Okay, so my big question is a question that is on a lot of people's minds, and that is Donald Trump and what he is up to and what our role is in response. I'm going to a protest this weekend, happily, and I'm just not sure what he is doing in terms of the spiritual world and how many people have to get hurt in the process. I'm kind of baffled by the whole thing.
We understand. Everybody is baffled. We did call him a wild card, and we have also called him the Joker in the pack. Understand that Mr. Trump has grown up in a world that sees things through a particular vision. And this vision is business. He is primarily a businessman, and he looks from a perspective that most people can't see. He looks at, you might call it efficiency. How does one run a business or an organization so that it's effective, so that it produces a profit? It raises more and more wealth. But in the process of that, he also does not necessarily intend to harm the people who suffer. There is a sense that he knows what's going on and has been going on for thousands of years within the hierarchical structure that has taken control over the world. Banking industry, the medical, industrial, military complex, all of the organizations, all of the structures, all of the things that are foundation on suffering, on evil, and on misuse of power. And there's a very strong intention on his part to dismantle these structures and to encourage a way of seeing from a perspective of what works, what is the most efficient way to achieve a long-term goal of, let's just say, establishing sovereignty in the, let's call it the hearts or the minds of the people. Now, this doesn't sound like Trump. This sounds like somebody who may have a benevolent streak, and it's not always that clear and obvious what that looks like, because the impression that many have is that this man is not benevolent. So at least give him the benefit of the doubt when it comes to his primary role. And his primary role is to create an environment that dismantles the old hierarchical structures that do not work, that do not allow people to use their inner authority, their wisdom, their imaginations to thrive. Because the indoctrination of the many thousands of years, and let's just go back to the beginning of the revolution, the Industrial Revolution. There have been many revolutions, and in fact, you might say he is here to instill a new revolution. But nobody can really see inside his mind and know what makes it tick and what aspects of his mind is geared towards being benevolent towards all of humanity. Now, it may not seem so, and the most important factor with this man is that it's very important not to judge anything on surface appearance. Most people will not investigate, will not read and study and try to find out how the minds of those who have lots of money and power, how they work, and where in the midst of all that, there is that heart beating. Where in the midst of all of the chaos, is there a common thread that is working towards a higher ideal and knows that the dismantling of the patriarchy and of the structures that are foundation on evil have to collapse. And we feel, even if he is in many ways an agent of the divine, unknowingly, we feel that what he is moving towards is the dismantling of the depths of evil that are the foundation stone to why everybody on this world is so controlled, is so brainwashed, is so dumbed down, and does not even believe in their own worth, in their own self-authority, and in their own sovereignty. So it's a very difficult distance to cover when you see the activities that this man initiates, and you see the ramifications, because he's also trying to cut down, you might say, on the energy of laziness, of those who do not have an incentive to be creative, to be imaginative, to move up in the world, to create their heart's desires, to follow their dreams, to not be subject to a paycheck, not be subject to old ways of thinking and seeing, but to begin to understand that it's time to re-educate each one of us who are on the planet now, to re-educate themselves, to see through the eyes of the divine, to see through the eyes of a higher perspective, and see that within a few years, the changes that this man may be able to effect will, in the long run, bring greater benevolence, bring shelter, food, sustenance to those who have been marginalized. And all of this is being done with the appearance of complete callousness. But we believe that at the root, in the heart, there is a desire to benefit all of humanity. So that's the brief answer to your question, is to say, do not judge the appearance. Do not judge on the basis of emotional responses, but see through the eyes of a mind that has a vastness to it, that can see a bigger picture, that can see a potential that was not available before. Now, if the other two candidates, the other president hopefuls and the supporter, were to have come into office, you would have continued the old paradigm of the ones who are pulling the strings in the background, the ones who have the power, the ones who are aligned with the dark energies that still wish to control and enslave humanity for their own evil purposes. And they would have become puppets, just as every other president almost has in the past, to this hierarchical structure of power, of evil, and of darkness that uses horrific sexual and ritual abuse practices, torture, and the absolute horrors that go on behind the scenes that most people are not aware of. There are many books that reveal the truth about this. All of the, almost everyone who is part of a sovereign, king, queen type of organizational structure are part of this hierarchy, this organization. There are many dark forces that we call the reptilians that are actually hybrids, and many of them are part of this. So we know that this is a big stretch. But so does Trump. He knows the truth. He knows who he's dealing with. And he was the wild card that they could not control. He is not working for the dark order. He's working for the light through his own, you might say, somewhat distorted viewpoint, but he has, as an intention, we strongly believe, a desire to change everything for the better by dismantling the structures that keep everybody in slavery. So this is something that you can study. We can recommend a number of books by a number of very well-researched authors who would validate much of what we're saying about the Dark Order and how they operate and how much they have infiltrated everything, including the New Age and including a way of mind control, just as much as they're engaged in weather control and in damage to the environment and a total lack of consideration for sovereignty of people who are treated as property and as means towards greater and greater control and domination. So we'll leave it at that, because we do understand how much of a stretch that would be. But we recommend that you do some research, do some investigating. David Wilcock, for instance, Mars, M-A-R-R-S, Jim Mars. Many of these people have been involved with whistleblowers who have been part of this dark order and have seen the harm it does, and have started to tell their stories, and have started to disclose the connections with the, you might call them the very, very dark extraterrestrial energies that have controlled and dominated and educated the hierarchical leaders to follow the path that they would like to see, which gives them complete control over humanity and creates slaves of humans, and has no interest whatsoever in the energy of life and the energy of Mother Earth and her creatures. So Jim Mars, David Wilcock, and many others, we can certainly share some names with you, and you look on our old website, raphaelwiseman.com. There are images of the covers of many of these books that disclose some of the truths behind the appearance. It is important to do as much research as you can to find the truth, because not everything that is, waved around with flags in protest is true. Much of it is a continuing way of seeing through the eyes of victimhood. And what we believe Trump is inviting is people to step outside of their sense of being a victim, to take their life in their hands and create a reality that is in alliance with their own heart's longing. So give him time. See what you can do to not judge the surface, but look deeper down and see what you can uncover that would resonate with you in spite of the clamor of those that are calling for his overthrow. So that answers your question in a way you would not have wanted, perhaps, but that's what we are bringing forth.
Well, I would have a lot easier time swallowing this if it didn't appear, you're calling it surface, but that he was going out of his way to benefit the billionaires, the wealthy, having to lie through his teeth in order to accomplish things, having to cause harm to other people in this process. And it's very, very hard for me to put the two together.
We understand. You might say we have just as much difficulty finding a balance point within all this. If we were to recommend reading a particular book, it's one that we have just finished because it was recommended for us. It's called Rich Dad, Poor Dad. And what it lays out is a way in which most people have been mind engineered, not through any harm but through the very process of conditioning to see things through a limited way, where those who have achieved wealth in their life have been educated to a different set of standards that sees things from a perspective not necessarily of harming anybody, but of seeing how opportunities can be taken to create wealth, so that there is a mindset that the wealthy have that contradicts, shall we say, the sense of victimhood that most people grow up with because of the limitation of those who have educated them, which has been passed down through many, many generations from the ancestors and from the parents who imbue their own sense of values into their children, so that the children grow up to become mediocre, shall we say. Those who strive to create wealth do so out of a sense of always striving for the highest, always striving to find um, an opening that others don't see, to be creative, and um, to educate others in a similar way. Now, we understand how much of what we're saying is a long shot, and how much one has to stretch to encompass a way of seeing where, um, let's just put it this way, instead of looking for a handout, one is being um, encouraged to look for opportunity. How can we find, in many ways, there's a spiritual message. Where can we find the silver lining in all this? Where is the golden nugget that will allow a new earth to appear? It certainly cannot be built on a structure of people who give up, people who feel victim, people who do not have the drive, the incentive, and the vision to create the new reality. So it's chipping away as we ask of everyone to chip away at those triggers in their life, those trapped emotions, those places where you feel unworthy. How does one face the future with a sense of excitement, a sense of creativity, of inventiveness, of imagination, that somehow whatever is going on is going to present us or me with an opportunity to do some good in the world, to also bring some good to myself, perhaps to accrue some wealth so you're not in poverty consciousness, so you're not always shuffling to pay the bills and never know how you're going to help your children when you pass. All of the stresses that people in the world are like weighed down by are keeping them down because they don't see the opening. They don't see the crack where the light comes in and know, oh, if I go in that direction, if I try something new, if I try to think out of the box, if I follow a path that will build a new earth, and I am going to do it because I am completely obsessed with creating some good in the world, and I have this vision, and I have these ideas, and I have the enthusiasm, and I'm going to bring as many with me as I can. So it's requiring everything he is doing is requiring 180 or 360 or a 90-degree shift in perspective. And sometimes you have to go maybe 360 a few times to get to look in another direction so that you can see some glimmer of what good could be coming out of this. The dependency that most people live in many ways, is what we feel he is attacking. Being dependent on something external to take you to the next level. And it's important that everybody rises to the next level of consciousness. Just as Einstein said, you can't solve a problem from the level at which it was created. You have to take it to a whole other level to see a different perspective, to see the answer. And so there's an invitation to dream big and not give in to the judging and the blaming and the bad mouthing, but seeing what is the good that can come out of this. Where can I find it in my life, in the life of my family, and my children? Where can I find a new direction that will bring us to the new earth? Because let's say the other two had become the president and the vice president. It would seem like nothing would have changed, but instead, the things that would have changed would have got everybody deeper into the mire. And the ingenuity that the Dark Order has, imagine what they created. Imagine the kind of energy and imagination that they used to create the whole pandemic that still has people terrified and dying and weakened and dependent on a system that is feeding the rich, feeding the power hungry, the power mongers, the war mongers. All these things are feeding an archaic machinery, an edifice that has to collapse. That's why this man is going after and revealing. Many things are being revealed that were hidden. This is a time of great revelation of what was hidden under the mat, what was hidden in the dark closets of the evil. And everything is being turned upside down. It could not continue the way it was, because that would have taken you deeper and deeper into despair and into a sense of greater and greater hopelessness and helplessness. The call, the revolutionary call, is to rise to a higher frequency, to create your reality out of your heart with your own determination and your own authority and your own command and your own imagination, and not acquiesce to the herd, to the sheep who follow. And the sheep follow in all directions. Many of the ones who are up in arms are following a particular sheep directive, because they don't see the distance, the goal, the higher purpose. They don't see through the eyes of God. So ask to see through the eyes of God and see a bigger picture, and ask for the guidance, the help, the clarity, so that you could see through your own fog. We're not talking directly at you, we're talking generally. But the fog that keeps people dumbed down through the school system, through the internet, through the social media, through the advertising, through the power structures that run the entire caboodle, entertainment industry, the medical, the war, all of these organizational structures are corrupt to the core, and none of them have the good of humanity or Mother Earth at heart. So put that into perspective, because the businessman Trump knows how to manage things, or he has a way of managing in order to create a change. Now he sees that change through his particular vision, but there is some merit in it as well as much harm and damage that will ensue. But you are in a shift of the ages. You are in a moment of truth where people are leaving the planet because it's time. New people are showing up. The young ones, the autistic ones, the brilliant ones are going to be taking over. And they need to be taught how to come from heart, how to come from the outside of the boxes. And that's why this complete upheaval has to be now. It can't be delayed, because the earth herself will also be answering soon with its movements, with earthquakes and volcanic eruptions, movements of oceans. It's imminent. The financial system is corrupt. It's built on nothing, and it must collapse too. In the midst of all the collapse, something good will come out of it. Hold that perspective and try not to see the trees, but look for the whole forest and see the growth, the potential for clean air, for more heart, because this is what will change the world. We have said enough, but it's definitely a lot to chew on. It's very difficult to find a clear line of thinking, a clear line of being that's not tainted by all the old perceptions and assumptions and all the old patterns that have been inculcated into most of those who live on the planet today. So,
One more thing about this. I am totally in favor of the end. Dismantling those systems and all of that, and living from the heart more and looking out of the box. Totally in favor of all those things. The problem that I have is with the means that he is using to get there.
Jesus. No, we totally understand. It's very difficult to find a perspective. And we must say a lot of what we bring through is fed by the information that comes to this one. This one has barely listened to one speech of that man. He does not watch the news. He does not know what's going on in the world. He does not know who is who and what they are and what they've done and what they're doing. But whenever he needs to know something, it shows up. So we can't go into details, not only because we don't have access to them, because we don't read the papers either. We look at the bigger picture and we see the dismantling. We do see the suffering and the hardship, but suffering and hardship have been your teachers for so long that this is going to hopefully evolve you as a species to a way of no longer having to learn through pain and hardship and mistakes, because you'll have been learning the lessons. It is completely, if you look at the French Revolution, it was one of the most horrific times. But if you look at the decadence and the attitudes of the royalty, and you look at the fact that that was the overthrow of the despotism of royalty that had to happen for a more democratic way of working in order for that to happen. And it involved tremendous suffering and guillotines and horror and rampant disregard for life. These are part of revolution and have been, and yet there's also the law of karma. So everything is finally orchestrated to accommodate individual and group and national and global karma in the process that has to happen. It is going to be necessary for the earth to cleanse herself of all of the evil and all of the misuses and the disrespects for Mother Earth and her children, in order to shake off the evil that has been suffocating her. Nothing is clean and nice and just filled with love and light in this process. Yes, you can still embrace love and light and have the inner power to express that and have that be your core. But in the world, that has to change. Suffering will definitely be a part of this transformation, we would say, rather than revolution. But you're basically looking at a revolution. You're looking at the times before the guillotine, before the councils came together, when there were people who were gathering and talking about how we must overthrow the evil of the royalty and the despotism and the way in which the poor have to suffer. So you are in the midst of a revolution. If you see it that way, nothing is going to look bright necessarily unless you look for the bright lights that are beginning to glow in the midst of this chaos and this darkness. As we said, it's a hard one to swallow, but it's important to see it personally from some shift in perspective that says, I see what's going on, I don't like it, I'm very uncomfortable, in fact, I'm horrified. And yet, somehow, it's better than the good old days going on and on and on, and the children being tortured and eaten, and the horrific things that happen to children that are abducted all around the world, that are trafficked, the trafficking. All of these things are real. They're not just some illusion. They're happening, and they're part of the infrastructure of the domination and controlling energies that run the planet. And everything has to stop. Everything has to be interrupted. And the only man that we know of at this time on the planet who can do that is your Mr. Trump. So give him a little leeway, just a little, and watch and try and see from a different perspective. We know this, what we have said, is going to be very unpopular, and perhaps we will put it up on YouTube so that whoever wants to is also able to rally against us. But we are asking for clarity, and it's difficult to have clarity when there is so much one-sided ways of seeing everything from a perspective that cannot see a bigger picture. And it's the bigger picture that we always strive to get you to aim for. To always ask, show me source, show me God. What is the bigger picture? Show me a way that I can find out for myself and move towards that bigger picture, not see things through a limited perspective.
Okay. I
We'll start
appreciate bigger perspective.
with this already,
Um,
are we?
may I ask something else?
Yes, we'll record that separately on the little voice recorder. Is this in turn, is this for the world?
It may be. I'm not sure.
All right, well, what's going out into YouTube, if anybody even bothers to listen to this whole episode, it will be recorded.
There's a rumor going around that on or about April 11th, the AI has set something in motion that can't be stopped, and the financial system will either collapse or suffer greatly. I know the angels and guides don't predict future because of free will, but I need to know how, if it's true, how I can protect the limited financial resources that I have.
We understand. So it's never a good idea to listen to rumors.
Listen to what?
Let me record. We did not record this part on the voice recorder, no question. We understand that you are talking about rumors that April 11th, some kind of artificial intelligence will set in motion something that cannot be stopped, and that is going to affect the financial structure of the globe. In fact, we would say don't listen to rumors. There are many predictions going on. If you want to know the kinds of predictions that we have been asked about and seen, and we're putting this out, and nothing is written in stone. What we are saying is what we have foreseen within the limited structure of time that shifts and changes dramatically all the time. We have seen that there will be definitely a financial crash. In fact, we have seen, if the timeline does not change, 3 of those, all towards the end, later in the year, where there would be a financial crash and there'll be some kind of recovery, and then it will continue again until there'll be another one. And that within the following year, the third one will be the most devastating and shift much of the paradigm of how money and wealth and exchange operates. However, we do not see anything in April 11th. We also do not see that artificial intelligence itself has any power to do anything unless it's wielded in the hands of those powerful ones that we've shared with you that we call the Dark Order. They will try many things. They are still trying to hold on, knowing that their time is at an end. And many are still desperate to grasp at straws. And when predictions such as and as specific as that, it is more than likely, just as they have engineered the pandemics and all of the new viruses and whatnots to frighten everybody, they are trying to instill maximum amounts of fear. We have also seen that somewhere towards July, and maybe something even earlier, might happen that will be somewhat catastrophic. We have seen or sensed the eruption of two volcanoes that would create some kind of havoc with travel and chaos and the environment. And we have also sensed that there will be times in the midst of all of these different kinds of crises, not much of it, let's just say the USA may be spared from some of it, but later, within a year or so, towards the beginning of next year, or perhaps even before that, we do foresee the possibility of some huge major disruption that will create a situation where transportation of goods and services, the availability of foods and utilities, many of these things, the networks of control, as well as the networks of communication that operate through your internet, through your electrical systems, your utilities, everything is controlled by computers that are subject to satellites in space, and all of this is subject, you might say, to the mercy of solar activity, cosmic radiations, and shifts and changes in the Earth's magnetosphere, in the Earth's orientation, in the Earth's stability. So we would recommend, again, that you educate yourself on survival, on disaster preparation, so that you have enough food, you have backup for your utilities, you have enough water, you have enough gasoline at least to get you somewhere if you need, you have enough ability to make some of your own food, to prepare healthy food like sprouting, that you have the ability to lay aside extra for yourself, to provide ways to stay warm and cool without dependence on the grids. It is wise, and it has been advised numerous times, to prepare without going into fear, without going into doom and gloom, without worry, and creating some way in which you establish for yourself and your neighbors and your loved ones a system of barter where perhaps you keep some cash at hand in the meantime that you can use for exchange. These things are basically common sense, and yet people don't want to even look at it. because they think, oh, well, we don't want to pay attention to that because that would be inculcating fear. But it's not about fear. It's about being prudent, about being wise. It's like watching nature. You watch the squirrel, you watch the birds. The birds don't just peck at a little bit of bird seed and gobble it up and that's it. They gather in their gullets a whole bunch of food and then they take it to the nest and share it. The same with the squirrels. They know when winter's coming and they start gathering seeds and acorns in order that they can survive through the winter. And so it's prudent to do these things, to grow your own food, to support local economy, local trading, to go to farmers markets, to establish relationship with those who grow food, with those who have firewood, with those who have the necessities for a certain level of comfort, to have backup lighting. It's not by chance that just because of the wind, this one showed up at the office in order to get his camping stove because the electricity was out. There's no lights, no internet, no ability to cook food. The fridge has to stay closed because there's no electricity for that. All of these things because of, let's say, 40-mile-an-hour gusts of wind. And this can happen just in the normal course of spring. Then, this one would have been at home. He would not have been able to do this this evening, this sharing, this soon, because there was no power. And so he came to the office to pick up his camping stove so he could make dinner. And he happened to have electricity at the office and was able to conduct this evening. So it does not mean that you give in to fear when you prepare. When your mindset becomes, well, sure, I'm hoping that nothing will happen that will cause catastrophe and loss of life and all this. But these things have been happening. It's wise and prudent to make preparations, to have enough batteries, to have enough flashlights, just out of common sense, to have a camp stove with little propane bottles. So we would recommend that you don't depend on the bank for all of your money, that you have other ways to diversify, to have some cash, if you have enough to invest in a little bit of silver or gold, or to have products that you can exchange with people so that you generate your own local economy. These things are going to be needed more and more as the system around you collapses. But anything associated with AI, you want to steer clear of. You can do it on your computers just to create images. But when it comes to depending on AI to create and to destroy, it only will do so in the hands of those who are already creating the kind of destructive energies on the planet. And so don't pay attention to the rumors. Don't give power to AI because it's only a tool being used in the hands of those who know how to manipulate. That in some ways answers your question.
Yes, I'm still a little confused about what the best thing to do with my money is.
We would say if it were us and we had money, we would put most of it under our mattress or in a place where we are feeling that it is pure, and have not all of it. Some of it you may want to invest in alternative financial systems. We do not trust that Bitcoin and we do not see a clear picture yet about the fate of crypto. And it may, in the short term, be able to create benefit and wealth for you. In the long term, we would not trust it to be reliable. There may not be any kind of reliable system. So have things that you are able to invest in, that you can use, that you can trade for survival, for goods, for food, as much as you can. Have, a common arrangement with those you would want to exchange with. Well, let's say we'll continue to use cash until there does come a time when cash will no longer even exist. In the meantime, while the banks are still coming and going and making a big show of crashing and then, putting more money into the pockets of those behind the scenes. In the meantime, we would say have some cash, diversify as much as you can, perhaps even invest in companies, bright young people who have a vision for technologies that will be benevolent, that do not depend on the systems that are going down. So it's very difficult for us to be more specific.
Mhm.
I would say read, look on the internet, study a broader perspective of even what the financial system looks like.
Mhm.
Perhaps, if you have to make travel plans, do so ahead of time. But again, you are moving into times that are uncertain, where anything could happen. And so it's going to come back to how resourceful, how imaginative can you be, how much can you think outside the box, how much can everything you do be geared towards benevolence, service to the whole, to the creatures, to the elderly, poor who don't have. How can you help bring them into the picture of a bigger way of feeding the community, or keeping it, create meetings with others and ask them, what do you think? How should we, what can we create together now? How can we start the process of cooperation, collaboration, sharing, instead of competing? These are the kinds of attitudes that will help see you through and see the others that you love and that you care about, or anybody that you have compassion for. Because there will be many marginalized people who will suffer that one could have helped, firewood, or distributing canned foods, things like that. And simple things like a camp stove. Everybody should have a camp stove backup. Everyone should have a few, maybe as many, 5-gallon containers of water as possible. Jungai to purify water. Simple things. Keep it simple and gather. Create circles to investigate these things, to share with others and create networks of support systems. These are going to be the foundations of the structures of the new earth, because they're all going to be based on cooperation, on community, on sharing resources, sharing time, sharing skills and wisdom. And those things are your assets in a time where you can't rely on the kind of assets that even the rich rely on. You can have 50 different properties. As long as you have one place to be, where you can have a home, and you can go in there, and you have some backup supplies, some basics. Keep it simple. All right, we're going to stop that one. We're still recording. Do you have any personal?
Yeah, I can ask something personal or
We'll stop